creators, you know.
So I'd like to welcome everyone here. I hope you're having a great day at GalaxyCon Richmond. And I'd like to welcome you to this panel, how to publish your indie comic book, both online and on paper. I'm Eric Pasola. I'm the workaholic behind the website Indie Comics Zone. I invite everyone in here who's interested in indie comic books to check out my site. It is all about promoting and helping indie publishers get published and get attention. And I have all kinds of cool content on there, like how-to guides, like how to get published, how to get attention, how to get reviewed, guides to printers, and more. There it is, Indie Comic Zone, and I have cards up here if you would like to know more information. End of advertisement. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to introduce my all-star panel this evening. They are 4 indie pro professionals who know what they're doing and can answer all of our questions. First, Anthony D. Stokes. He's a screenwriter turned comic book creator. Based in Virginia, Anthony is known for his indie comic books, Intrusive Thoughts, Decay, a supernatural revenge thriller, and many more. Anthony works, his focus is on horror, love, despair, grief, revenge, and end-of-the-world survival.
The fun stuff.
Only the fun stuff. Then we have Charlie McElvy. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie, Richmond's own Charlie. He is the likeness of the spider squirrel. And he's also created, and he's the founder of the Zion universe. Charlie has co-created indie comics characters such as Trash Panda, Tailgater, Milestone, Blue Chip, and the new Team Force 5, Watchguard, and Rook. And he also, you may recognize him from the television show American Ninja Warrior Season 10.
Oh, yeah. Damn. Oh, damn.
Next on our panel, Pat Shand. Pat is a writer, creator, and crowdfunding expert. He has created and co-created the comic books Destiny New York, Snap Flash Hustle, Breathless Little Girl, Family Pets, Prison Witch, Afterglow, and much, much more. He's worked for Scout, Black Mask, Boom, IDW, Zenoscope, Dark Horse, HarperCollins, and more. He's even written for Marvel. He has used Kickstarter to fund 27 Kickstarter independently produced graphic novels and has run campaigns for other prominent creators and publishers. Vince White is the last member of our panel.
Thank you.
Vince is an artist, creator, writer, and independent publisher who's known for his creator-owned work, The Legend of Willpower. Vince is one of the co-founders of Primal Paper Comics, a Virginia-based comic coalition of independent comic book publishers and creators. Vince's formal training is in CAD design, but he's made his jump to full-time comic public work in March of 2011. And since then, he's traveled the East Coast on the comic convention circuit, lecturing in community college, public schools, and universities. This is our panel. Thank you. Here's the first question. I'd like to open it up. First, we'll have about 5 questions, and then we'll leave it up to the audience to ask their questions of our creators.
Beautiful.
How did you guys get into comics as a creator?
Oh boy, how did I get into comics as a creator? I grew up loving writing. I read Goosebumps as a kid, novels. I started to want to be a writer as soon as I started reading. I would write little fan fiction stories on my typewriter. And then as I got older, I began to push into writing for theater. I just looked at everything that could possibly be written. TV, movies, any possible way to express myself as an avenue for me to get into. So I started to see comics as a goal. It seemed more accessible than many of the other ones. The creators seemed to have a community that I could speak to right now as a fan, which is unique to comics. I began to go to conventions like this, talk to creators, and make connections. And from that point on, from my first convention on, I found myself pushing more and more into the community and just sharing samples and making connections with writers, artists, editors, and it didn't take long for me to get my first gig, and then I was able to use that gig as a stepping stone to get to the next gig and the next gig, and it has never stopped, and it never will.
What, we got to follow that.
Yeah.
What he said.
I'm assuming I'm next. Yes.
Is it working?
Can y'all hear me? Mine was a little bit different. I remember I saw Superbad going into high school, so I saw at the perfect age, and I was like, I want to make this, and started writing things down, and then so much stuff happened. Like a decade later, I kind of found myself in a position to be able to make comic books and put some money aside, put everything together, and it's been amazing.
It's my turn. My brother had a box of comic books, a shoebox, under his bed. And whenever I read them, he would put me in a headlock and rub his knuckle across my head until I begged for mercy. And that's the first time I got exposed to comics, which made me really realize, hey, I want to draw these primary colored, flashy things one day. That's how I got into it.
Nice.
Like that.
I guess mine wasn't too different. I mean, we all started as fans in a way first, right? And the first book I remember reading actually was a DC Comics Presents, and I forget the issue number, but I picked it up at a 7-Eleven for like 75 cents. My grandma bought it. I didn't pay for it. But it had Superman and He-Man fighting. Skeletor was actually like, using his sword of power. And that cover just like is still in my mind today. I actually have a copy of but not the original one that I own, but I have a copy of it just because I needed it, right? But it was that book that really told me that you could tell any story you want. And it was that creative flood just started running through my brain. And ever since then, I've had ideas, like things I wanted to do. With my friends, we'd create Transformers comics on our bedrooms late at night and stupid stuff like that. So it just never stopped. And one day I just said, what am I doing? Why don't I put that book out there? And so I'll say, like, for me, I had the advice of, you have the story to tell, just tell it, and don't let anything else stop you. And I was like, all right, let's go then. So I didn't stop there. I mean, that was it.
May I interject one moment? We're showing our age when we say Superman was fighting He-Man. I just want
Thanks, Vince.
Yeah.
All right, next question. What has been the biggest challenge you faced in the business, and how did you get past it?
Biggest challenge, I think, is, with networking as one of the main ways in, you also have to do a lot of networking, I mean, you have to make it seem as if when you're talking to an editor that you don't want to secretly have them make your entire career. You have to make these genuine connections. And that's hard when you're so, especially early on, when you're so hungry going in to make those genuine, actually person-to-person connections and not seem like you're thirsty the entire conversation. It's really hard because these editors, and even me as a writer, I'm the writer and people pitch to me constantly. And even though I know the passion, I understand it, it's tiring. So imagine an editor at a company like Marvel, DC, Aftershock, still. It's rough to go in that way. So making your own path, for me personally, I found it is better and better and better. Just, we talked about Kickstarter a little bit. I'm not going to go into that a lot more. But just finding ways to do it yourself is what I find now. These avenues are open in a way that they weren't years ago, and it's great because the networking does, it's tricky.
I like that thirsty plug you're doing there.
Yeah.
And Aftershock.
Close. It's close.
I know the bibliography.
I like it.
I guess my turn.
Yes, sir.
My turn. I think the biggest problem I had with, the biggest challenge is that people will try to determine what is a comic book, what isn't a comic book. There is no hard definition. Is this even? I don't think it's working.
Just barely.
It's just barely working. And I think it's so, you find a lot of gatekeepers, and we all have our own visions, and we all have different comic books that we want to do. There's so many different mediums. There's webtoons, Zine, ashtrays. And so making sure that nobody can tell you that what you're doing doesn't have any artistic merit, making sure you're telling the stories you want to tell. That's the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah. Oh, my turn. Man, this goes fast, doesn't it? I want to buttress what he's saying, but let me say it another way. The biggest hurdle that you'll ever have to overcome is belief. You got to believe that you can do it. If you don't believe you can do it, you will never do it. I had buddies that could draw circles around some of the Marvel artists, but they never believed they could do it. They were happier laying cable or working for, telecommunication companies or, hitting a 9 to 5. And their talent was there. Their talent was air apparent, but they didn't believe it because this is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I'm a writer, artist. I write, I letter, I illustrate my books as well as write for other artists that will come on to my label and so forth. It's a lot of work, but if it's a passion, it's not work. So you just have to really believe. And the thing that sets any of us apart, or whatever level, because I'm not talking to editors like that, but the thing that sets us apart is that we believed at some point in time we could do it, right? And we just walked out and just did it.
Yeah, I think one of the. By the way, it's always work. I don't know what you're talking about, man.
It's always true.
But I think for me, the biggest thing initially when I first got in was, who's my audience? Like, where am I going to find an audience? And I was telling Stokes at dinner a little bit about my story. Is when I first wrote my first book, Watchguard. Don't go buy it; it's terrible. But when you can go buy it. I don't mind the money, but but it was a book that as I wrote it, and I have an artist working on it, a Marvel artist at the time, and I was real stoked about it. I realized in the middle of production, I was like, crap, who's going to buy this? Like, seriously, and Kickstarter was in its nascency. I mean, it was so infantile that nobody really even knew what crowdfunding was really about. So I had an uphill battle, I realized. And even to this day, we talk about this on Twitter quite a bit, about marketing your book, right? Finding your audience, building your audience, because you can't always find an audience. You got to make one. I learned early that that's how you do it. And so what I did is I actually took my characters and I compiled my characters into like a who's who or a Marvel Universe kind of a guidebook. And I added gaming stats to it, and I got a gaming license, and I sold the gaming book first. Incidentally, it ended up winning awards, which is not my purpose. My purpose was to build an audience. But I realized that there's a lot more work into that front load of marketing and building the audience that really makes a big difference. And a lot of those people still buy my books today, and that was like 13, 14 years ago. So once you make and build your audience, they will follow you. Stay loyal to yourself and to your platform. They'll stay loyal to you. And I love when people come up to me in cons and go, hey, I bought Watchguard way back when. And I go, I'm sorry, but thank you. And it's just great. And so that was the biggest hurdle. And I found a creative way past it. I think there's a way over every obstacle. That's probably why I was on Ninja Warrior. I feel like everything can be overcome. You just got to find a way either over, around, or through. Which way you go doesn't matter. But there is hope on the other side. You just got to get over there, right?
I didn't realize that your gaming was I thought your gaming was how you came out. Oh man,
well, it was.
His stuff yeah. But his gaming stuff is amazing. By the way, I was on Ninja Warrior too. I just got to the first rung.
Next question: how do you guys see comics evolving, and how do you see creators playing a part in that change? And that's the new platforms we've got, the omnibus comics, global comics, things like that.
Yeah. The middleman is gone. The middleman is gone across the board, not just in comics. If you look to the music industry right now, the goal used to be get signed by a label. Now, someone gets signed by a label, they're seen as an industry plant. People want this organic connection with creators. That's Kickstarter, Patreon, Indiegogo, OnlyFans, all that kind of stuff. It's direct from creator to fan. Stores, cool, kind of struggling right now. Kickstarter, soaring. That relationship being a actual thing where you can talk to the creator. You can reach out, and the person that you hear back from isn't a store who has to hear back from a distributor, from a publisher, to the creator who will never even hear the problem. It's to the creator. That's unique to now, and it's changing things. It's putting things in our hands. We have more power than ever before, both over our own career and the fan experience. So the fan experience is better now than it's ever been, because who cares more than us? Creators.
I should have said somewhere else. It's going to be hard to follow that. I more or less agree. I think there's so much creative freedom now. You know, there are so many platforms that you can use to get your stories out there. And I really truthfully don't believe it is. I think you can do it. I think if you make a good product, find your audience, like Charlie said, you'll be good to go. And I don't know if that was always the case for comics.
So what has changed? First, I'm going to have a comic on OnlyFans. It's going to be called Super Feet. Just give me 3 days. I will have it up there, okay? Let's go. Anyway, you kind of got me on my soapbox here. I think right now, American or Western comics aren't selling as the traditional mainstream comics, Marvel and DC. They're not selling as well as they did 20 or 30 years ago. Manga is really taking over right now. Trade paperbacks, as far as Western comics, are kicking butt. Scholastic comics, comics geared towards kids, are kicking butt. The reason why, in my opinion, I think what has changed is that in Western comics, American comics, we changed the focus from the artist to the writer. And this is a little pet peeve of mine, but I think it's true. Back in the 90s and 80s and before that, artists were superstars. They were like movies. They were like musicians. They're like musicians. To talk to Barry Windsor Smith or get a Neil Adams signature, or Jim Lee or Mark Silvestri signed copy is it's akin to talking to Slash from Guns N' Roses. Okay,
Showing your age again.
Yeah, showing my age again. It's like getting Lil Nas X signature. All right. And this is the big difference between, in my opinion, Western comics and manga, is that if you wanted to read a novel, you go get a novel. You buy a comic book. Why? For the art. And therefore, the artist was accentuated, or he was elevated. He was elevated. And so we looked at comic books as art. They're not selling pages of novels and putting them up framed in a museum. No, but there's pages of comic book art in museums because it's art. And once we switch, when the big guys left, sorry guys, when the big guys left Marvel and DC, you know who they were when they formed Image, right? Because they weren't being compensated, right? And this shook the mainstream so much. They shifted the focus from the artists to writers, and not realizing that it was the art. We saw the art as the value. That people were speculating on comics not because of the storyline. It was because of the art. And now we have these, writer-driven motifs in comics in the Western genre, and their ideas have staled. They just keep repeating the same things over and over again, where you could get a good artist and he'll have an idea that the writer does not initially come up with. He'll say, I got this idea for this cool character, and I'm going to draw him on the page, and I'm going to do this and that, which will spark the writer's interest, and he'll write something, good or bad, but that art would sell that book. And I think that's what has changed in comics now, and I think until we realize that in the West, we appreciate art for the art's sake. We invented the comic book. you know, this is a states thing. We took comic strips and collected them together and created the comic book. This is our genre. This does not belong to any other country. So that's what I believe. Follow that, brother. No.
Once upon a time. I think I want to echo Pat's points and kind of maybe bolster them a little bit. I think the accessibility has changed dramatically, which was, and it's kind of your point too. You can, I mean, it isn't just cons, right? You can go and you can DM most of us on Twitter or add us or something like that anywhere, and a lot of us respond. I know I'm pretty responsive. Pat's really responsive when he can be, when he's not packing 6,000 books or whatever the hell he's doing. But seriously, I think the accessibility has made a big difference, and that is creating this evolution in comics because we have multiple distribution vehicles, right? We've got digital, we've got print, we've got digital and print, we've got, I mean, there's probably movie, motion comics, whatever. I mean, people are doing all kinds of stuff. Global Comics is great. I love their vehicle because they're building a digital platform, unlike Comixology, which was built like a basic library access system. Global Comics is actually built as a social media distribution channel for comics, and that's new and it's different. It's really freaking cool, and what they're doing and integrating in that platform is outstanding. So I think the accessibility has made comics. It is given us an evolutionary new path, right? Evolution goes in branches, and we've got a new branch now with this accessibility of social media and digital comics, the new digital comics platform, and the cutting out of the middleman is really a big factor.
Thank you. So what advice, aged creators,
I don't know what that means.
He's talking
what
about
advice would you give?
That's what I was thinking.
What advice would you give to someone starting out as an indie comic book creator?
Someone starting out, I would say write a lot on your own first. My earliest writing will never be seen by anybody. I wrote reams of fan fiction, thick books of it that no one's ever going to see. There's this real thirst to put your early work out, to start writing, and as soon as you write that first thing, it's the best thing I'll ever write, put it out. No, if you look back in 10 years, you're going to wish that you probably didn't, just work on your craft first. Develop yourself as a writer, find your voice, because at first you're going to be just this collection of your inspirations. You got to find yourself through your writing, and then at that point, the avenues are really, really open now. Hiring artists, one of the biggest questions I get is, how do I find artists? The answer is everywhere. Here. Just go to Artist Alley. I got more cards for artists I want to hire in this Artist Alley than I have in a very long time. Online, Twitter,
Reddit,
DeviantArt, Reddit, all over the place. All over the place. There's the avenue is open when you're ready, but if you're just starting out, if that question feels like it's for you, you're not ready yet, focus on yourself, build yourself up, and then go out there and you can do it.
I'm going to give it two-parter, like take whatever amount of money that you're going to need and then multiply it by 10. Because there's so many expenses, you don't even know what you don't know. And I think also a big thing going to you, like what you're saying is figure out the platforms, like, Kickstarter, et cetera. Make sure you understand the platforms before you start. And then once you start making these comics, you are not going to be able to consume a tenth of the media that you did before, so that's another thing to keep in mind. You were surprised, bro.
I know. I'm always surprised. So my advice. Okay, I think what Pat and McElvy has said is true. Is that the delivery platforms have changed, but the thing that I think I would do if I was starting out is I would promote myself, and I would promote the artist. What I would do is I would realize that readers want to be enveloped in your work. beyond the pages of your comic. So, back in the day, Stan Lee would write little articles in his comic. Stan Lee soapbox. Draw a little picture of himself. He'd be animated. They had letter pages where you could reach out and communicate. So today that would be the Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, right? But they weren't reaching out to talk to some paper pusher at the front desk. They were reaching out to speak to a character. Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko. In other words, turn yourself into an icon. Turn your artist into an icon, because they're just as important as the characters on the page. They're just as important as the symbol in your character's chest. If we go back to what made Western comics great, we like iconography, we like heroes, we like icons. We want to worship stars, and you got to give comic book stars in order for fans to really connect. And one thing I'll say, and I'll probably get off this. Manga may not put the names of the artists up front, but if you really pay attention to manga, it's the art that is driving manga, in my opinion. It's the art that's driving manga. So much so that whatever the real storyline can be translated into just bits of English, that's really written like Japanese or whatever, right? And it's just translated into bits of English. And you're like, yeah, that's great. He's on the mountain summoning power. And the original dialogue may have been him tapping into the galactic equinox, pulling energy from, but it doesn't matter. It looks cool because it's got the explosions and the energy, and it's the art that's driving it. And I think it's for indie publishers. Oftentimes we hire artists, we get them on the cheap. I'll tell you, we get artists from overseas. We pay them low page rates. We give them no shine. We are becoming like the industry, right? Which is what drove the big guys away. They weren't getting their relish. They weren't getting their shine, and these companies weren't realizing the value they had in these artists. And if you got a guy from Ecuador, you need to every once in a while do a write-up in your indie comic about this artist. And he's from Ecuador. He lives here, blah, blah, blah. He lives off of $400 a month, but he produces the amazing art. Do you know how much your fans will connect with that? This is what I think has changed. This is what I think I would tell you to do. And you would spurn a whole new, in my opinion, revolution in indie comics, in my opinion. I'm done.
Give me that thing.
My advice is, I mentioned like struggling early, trying to figure out who my audience was and building that audience. But today, if I were starting over or starting afresh, Pat's advice is spot on, because he totally pointed that cannon at me when he said, "Don't publish the first shit you write." Right? So, can I say that? Anyway, I just did.
It's after dark.
It is after dark. Hey, it's comics after dark, y'all. Let's go. But no, seriously, I wouldn't. Don't publish the first thing you write. But more importantly, and Vince said it, build your brand. Now, I talk about brand all the time when I talk about with my employees or when I interview people for my day job. And I ask, the one question I ask in interviews is, what does your brand say about you now? And I can't tell you the number of people who go, well, I don't know what you mean. And I say, your brand. What is your brand? Who are you? Why should I care? Why should I hire you? Why should anybody hire you? What is your brand? What is your value prop? You can phrase it any way you want to, but if you don't know what your brand is, find your brand first. Build your brand. Get on Twitter. Get in spaces. Host spaces. Go on, right? Go on Instagram. Do something. Whatever social media feed. If you want to do some crazy Snapchat stuff or OnlyFans, I don't care. Whatever. That's like the fourth
Super
OnlyFans
feet.
reference tonight.
Super feet.
Super feet. But build your brand, because today, more than ever, we follow as fans. We often follow not characters so much as creators, and that's just a fact, right? Now I do follow a lot of characters. We all do, right? Stokes is a character, but I love him too.
Both. They're all
But yeah,
valuable.
build that brand, and really, and it's hard because I know a lot of us are introverted. I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm actually pretty shy.
I don't believe it.
It's true. It's true as all sin. But you know, I come out of my shell to do what I got to do because I know that I want to do this. I want to bring fun to an audience. I want to bring my stories to someone who might like it, someone like me. So, and if you enjoy your stories, you're your first fan. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Don't trust your mom. Just saying.
Or your big brother.
All right.
Thank you. I want to open the questions up to the audience. If anybody has any questions for our creators.
Yes, sir.
Hi, thanks, Lee Callie. Well, you say don't publish the first thing you write. When do you publish?
When do you publish it?
Yeah, is it better to eat your own dog food to learn where you suck? Or is it better to wait till you get to some supposed perfect state that you really never going to reach either?
Well, no, I wouldn't say either of those two options. I mean, there's a large gap between those. You know, you'll never be perfect, but you'll sure be a lot better than you are when you're writing your first project. You know?
Agree.
Yeah, so I'd say work on yourself. You know, you'll of course never know. You think, but here's the thing: that first thing that you write, wait a year, read it again, go back, edit it. You'll be amazed by what you see fresh, all the things that you would change. And if you wouldn't change anything, it's either you're born amazing or you haven't grown enough yet. You know, I mean, I'll write something now, put it away, and go back in 3 months, and I'm like, wow, I was worse 3 months ago. You know, so I would say at least be writing for a few years, you know, just if you have time to put aside. It's cool to be a hobby for a while, you know. Not everything has to be a career as soon as you begin. I was a writer by hobby for over a decade before I was ever paid for it. I tried to be paid for it, but I wasn't ready, and thank God that those things didn't go through. And Charlie, no offense, man, no offense. But yeah, my shit was not ready. But yeah, there's no magic way to know, you know, the truth is that you'll probably try before you're ready. We all do. I do, you know?
Yeah, and I'll just chime in because I already I actually pointed the gun at myself earlier anyway. But Pat's right. I mean, I really regret publishing WatchGuard? No, not at all, actually, because I learned so much. Like, that's one thing I could never take away from that experience. So while I probably shouldn't have put that book out in that form, in that structure, I should have waited a little bit. And I actually have a script of things that I will change in a Redux, and I actually had like 12 extra pages because it needs that much more added to it. It just wasn't enough. It was too much, too fast. There's a lot I learned. But I learned about Kickstarter. I learned about building an audience, right? So if you do jump out there and publish the first thing, you just remember, like, what's that thing they say? Fail is the first attempt at learning. I mean, honestly, it's so true. And for as much as I can look at that book and go, whoo, that's bad, I also look back and go, but the experience that I built around it, the lessons I learned, the wisdom that I built up around it, and then following guys like Pat and Stokes and Vince over the years and other folks out there who are doing it and doing it well, from my perspective anyway, emulate some of those things.
I would say I was like you, man. I was writing, I told you, since I was in high school. So it was probably 14, 15 years before I could publish my first thing. I was chopping at the bit, man. I was foaming at the mouth when I finally did my first story. So I would say wait until until you have to make it, and then you'll have, your instincts will be honed, and it'll come out a lot better.
Yeah, I'm always the contrarian. I say put it out. Be prolific. I say comics have a long memory. They have a long memory. We are citing stories now that are over 60 years old. We're putting them into movies now, right? We're talking about I would love to know Stan Lee's the first thing he ever wrote. I would love to see how bad it was, how crappy it was. I would love to see Steve Ditko's first piece of work, or Jack Kirby's, because it's a collective experience over time. Comics don't exist in that month, right? They're a catalog of, yeah. So no, just put it out there, because with all these different platforms, nobody's gonna see it anyway. but
Charlie just said.
But 20 years from now, your diehard fans are going to be looking back and like, yo, where's the first thing these guys wrote? And they're going to see that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle book that's black and white, crappy, drawn in ballpoint pen. And they're going to say, man, this is so dirty. And these guys were killers before they were saying cowabunga. And they're going to appreciate it. So that's my thing.
Yes, ma'am.
So comics are really hard to continue to draw. What would you recommend for someone who's struggling to find motivation to continue their work?
Struggling to find motivation. I would ask yourself a couple of things. One, how much do you want it? If you can find ways to stoke your own motivation and really find a way to dig in and ask yourself why you want to do this. If you can readdress and sort of have a moment with yourself and answer, the reason that I want to do this is because if I don't do it, I'll be unhappy. If I don't do it, my thoughts won't be expressed. If you have that conversation with yourself and just keep reminding yourself, because the truth is that there are times when I have to keep working because I have so much on my table now. But there are times when I'm like, man, this is a lot. It feels like this is more work than it would be if I wasn't doing this. Maybe I should trim a few things here and there. But the truth is that when I really think about it, I feel lucky to be able to do this. And I feel that if I wasn't writing, if I wasn't expressing myself, I wouldn't be who I am today. There'd be an essential piece missing. And it's that conversation with self that kind of, it re-motivates me.
I feel like you answered. You got anything?
I got you. No, great. Well, I will not be contrarian to anything that Pat said so far. We're still early. So for me, there's two things. When I look at motivation, the problem with motivation is it's fleeting. And whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic motivation, because you have your pals and your family who are going, keep going, keep chugging, you got it, right? You get your cheerleaders. And then you got your internal cheerleader that goes off every once in a while and says, you know what, this is great, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. But both of those are fleeting. So you need to remember that motivation is absolutely necessary for all things in life. Everything you move towards, that's what motivation is it's the moving towards something. But dedication is far greater and of greater value than motivation. Dedicate yourself to your craft. Dedicate yourself to building it up. Be committed to it, right? Even the days that suck, do something around that thing. Be dedicated to it. It's like fitness. So if you work out once a month or not, right? You're not committed to it. But if you work out every day or every other day or some regular schedule, even when you don't feel like it, change happens. And your crappiest day working out is still the better day than the day you didn't. And the same goes for crafting, building your craft. Be dedicated to it and every day write something. Even the days where you feel like writing nothing, you know what's going to come out of you is nothing but garbage, write it anyway. Or draw it, or whatever your craft is. But dedicate to yourself first, and then dedicate to your craft to get it done. Should I drop that mic?
I want to second what Pat said. He said something.
What?
He said, yeah, no, I got there. No, he said conversation with self, man. That's so important. That's you looking in that mirror and saying, hey, look, come on, if you don't do this, you're not gonna be happy, or this is wrong, this is broke. Go ahead and fix it, because this is how you will feel better. And it's such a deep and true conversation that some of us are afraid to have, and you just gotta. If you're looking for motivation, just be real with yourself. Yeah. Just be real with yourself.
Oh no, I mean they said it. They said it all. y'all doing good.
Stokes, you answer first this time. How about that? No.
You said what?
So you can answer first next time.
Nah, okay.
Well, the person with the cheerleader thing.
Oh, I didn't even know that was cheerleader. My bad. I was just saying it.
Nah, it's birds of prey, Harley. Anyway, so you were talking about sort of like building your audience and like sort of with like the gaming book or whatever, but like, what are like other ways that you would recommend building an audience, especially with like social media and stuff that I don't know if you would know much since you sort of like came up with
Want me to take this one?
I think building an audience is like people should come to you for your books, your entertainment, whatever, but they should try to come to your personality. And I think Charlie said a lot of stuff introverted. You kind of gotta create a version of yourself that can be extroverted, that can be public facing, and then just put it out there, and you'll simultaneously be marketing yourself, building your audience for you and your product as well.
I think that you're great at that, actually.
Me too.
I found out about who you were through hearing you speak, because you were tapping into something on Twitter, which, you know, could be a useful platform, could be a dog shit platform, who knows? You know, Twitter though has spaces. You can go on Twitter, and if you're following someone, right, at the top of the app, if someone is in a space that you follow, it's the first thing you see. You hear their voice. It's like a little podcast.
Yeah.
No one in comics uses it to the extent that Stokes does.
Yeah.
Period. And I was stunned at how it was still active. I had seen no one using it. And I went in, and Stokes had built this community into it, you know? And that was really cool. So I think that if you could do that, if you could find these communities that people exist in, and then be an outlier within those communities, that to me, really, really good move. Good move.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm glad to
I
get
said spaces earlier. You're the one I was thinking of when I said
my eyes. I'm the only one that uses them. No, my.
So many spaces, man.
I'm glad to get my flowers, you know, finally.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just kind of relating to one of the things you were talking about earlier about using the different distribution networks. This is kind of like a three-part question, I guess. It's all kind of connected. So just real quickly, all of you guys are all doing full-time, earning your income from comics exclusively, right?
No.
Just Pat.
Pat?
Full-time.
Just Pat.
Full-time, and that's mostly through Kickstarter?
I wouldn't say, it's a lot. You know, Kickstarter, I do. I also run Kickstarters for other creators. If you need me to do that for you, I will. I'm your guy, you know, no one's better. I write articles, I ghost write, I write for games, I do work for hire comics, so I really, you know.
So how much would you say has to, I guess I'll ask both parts of the question real quick and then you guys can just take it. How much would you say has to be done on a book before someone tries to launch their social media or marketing or crowdfunding campaign? And then along those lines, when we were talking about the challenges earlier, the one thing that I didn't hear you guys mention was money. And then under advice, you did say, you know, keep an eye on the money because you should expect a higher budget than you're prepared for.
I said 10 times higher.
So what are some of those unforeseeables that are the most important, or most common unforeseen costs that you guys have encountered? It's all kind of connected.
Okay, so, okay, yeah.
I would say I didn't know you had to format a comic book to get printed. I thought I thought they did it at the printer, so I had to spend $300 to have somebody just add a black bar to every page on the comic book. So stuff like that. Like, you got to think about a comic exists digitally, and then when you're going to physical, it's an entirely different market. It's a entirely different process, to the point that some people don't even print physically. Yep. So it's an entirely dynamic thing, and I think that's also important to keep your options open, but also plan ahead. If you plan on printing something physically, you need to know those steps ahead of time.
Yeah, I'll chime in about how much you need done. That's really important, and it's dynamic. You know, when I first started out, I only had enough money put aside to be able to afford maybe between 5 and 10 complete pages per project, and I would commission the artist to do those, and I would create a Kickstarter based on those. Save money for covers. Covers are very important on Kickstarter. If you're doing single issues, you need cover, variants, all that action. So 5 to 10 pages is low. And in those cases, I would take a long time to produce the comic, but I would make sure that the scheduled delivery date says that, right? So they know when to expect it. But the truth is that as much as you can get done beforehand, the better. The quicker that you can deliver, the better. If you have, say, all of it done, that's the best, but it's not. It's nothing against you or the project if you don't, because people understand, they're going to look at that due date, and as long as you hit that, and throughout the process, as long as you stay communicative, I think you're going to be okay.
The benefit of also waiting and having a complete comic book done is I kind of popped them on Twitter probably a little bit under a year ago, maybe a little over, and I would send the comic book to people. Like I had it on a Google Drive, and I was saying, who wants to read my comic book? And I would get like 50, 100 people I just sent out because I wanted to lay a lot of groundwork really fast. So that's the benefit. If we haven't used the word leverage today. Have we used leverage? You said leverage. You said leverage. Yeah. So. You want to. That's advantageous to have a full comic book ready. You should leverage that by sending it out to people. Don't be too. I think people too try to get the return on investment too fast. You want to throw the little fish in and get the big fish essentially. So something to keep in mind.
I might have to come back to me.
All right. I think Pat said it. I was hoping he was going to go there, and I think it's how much needs to be done first is definitely fluid. Set expectations. That's the most important thing is set expectations up front with the audience that you're trying to get, if you're doing crowdfunding. You can crowdfund a zero complete book if you want. You just do a concept art or whatever. No art is definitely a no-hitter. A no, don't try it. Because nobody's going to swing at it. But you don't have to have a finished book. You don't even have to have 5 pages finished if you communicate and if you market well, right? So there's a lot of other things that come around that. You can't. There's no real specific answer to it. The ideal is to have a finished book and at least one cover or some processes of covers, which is a good idea. And then another aspect you had said is about social media. When I started doing Spider Squirrel, before I launched the first issue, for 2 years. I was talking about the book, teasing art, showing concept art, showing covers, pinups, whatever the hell I had, right? Anything that came in that had Spider Squirrel on it, even stuff that I haven't used. I have some unpublished art that's been published on the web, just as a teaser, right? So, start your social media campaign as soon as you got your idea, right? As soon as you know you're going to go out there and commit to doing this and publishing this, because by the way, guess what that is? Motivation, right? You put it out there in the world and said, I'm going to put this book out. They're waiting for you.
Live up to your word,
right?
Yeah.
So start your social media campaign as soon as you can, and build your brand today. Don't even wait for the product to come to mind. And then like Pat said, and the other side on the money thing is, I agree with Stokes. You plan for the unplanned. You just don't know. It's like having kids. Oh yeah, it costs the average American $600 to have a kid per month because diapers are expensive or whatever, and you find out it cost me $1,600. How the crap did that happen, right? Because I ate as much as the kid did, or whatever. So, you just don't know. And it gives you a chance to plan for contingencies. But don't be afraid of that. I think that's the other thing, too. I think people are afraid of the money side of it. Plan. I know it's a negative word for some people, but just plan it and build your spreadsheets or whatever you use to track things. We were talking about this at dinner, too. I have so many projects running right now that aren't out there yet, and I've teased or talked about, and I have to keep a spreadsheet because I don't remember how much I paid everybody, right? So, because I've dripped and whatever here and there. It just depends, but you can do it. There's ways to do everything. Like I said, you got to kind of be creative sometimes and plan ahead. I know it's not really an answer all the way. Hopefully, it's an encouragement though to just get out there and do it.
All right, I think. The great. Okay.
I gave you enough time.
No. To be blunt, it costs about $2,000, maybe $2,500 to make a comic. You can get an artist that'll do it for about $35 a page. You can.
I need his Rolodex.
I know. You can get some great artists that'll do it for about $35 a page.
No wonder I'm slow.
You can get some of them that'll do it for $35, maybe $40, $50 with color, right? And these guys are all overseas. This is what Marvel shifted to. and you can pay them over time. As far as starting a Kickstarter or Indiegogo, yeah, all you need is like a cover. You can do a cover, and people are investing in you. You got a great video explaining what you're doing. They'll invest in you. His issue with setting up pages for print. A lot of guys now, I call them CP3Os. I call them that stands for cell phone comic book producers. They do everything online. They don't know how to illustrate, draw, or paginate, or set anything up. So they spend extra money because they have to have other people set that stuff up for them because they have no idea about the programs and so forth. If you're going to do it, I would say learn some of that. But the prices are so cheap now. You can get into it and have other people do it. It's just going to cost you a little bit more. My take on crowdfunding is it started out where you were investing into a book and they knew it wasn't done yet. But now people have turned it into completed books. They sell it on a crowdfunder or on a crowdfunding platform, and they deliver it right to you. So they kind of have changed the platform in my opinion.
I am very sorry we've run out of time. They've given us the wrap it up symbol, but I wanted to let our panel explain where you can see them next or plug the project that they're working on and most excited about.
All right, on table C5, Artist Alley. Find me at Pat Shand. I am on Kickstarter every month. Right now, I have a campaign up called Steamy. Find it at tinyurl.com/steamycomic. It is wholesome comic book erotica. You can find the space between Etsy that has an array of genres. And Smoke Weeds to the Future is the big seller for this con. Come see me at the table. I am next to this gentleman right here.
I'm at C4. If y'all have any more questions, I'll be outside. If anybody has any more questions about the comic books, I'm at Stokes the Writer on Twitter. I'm on Kickstarter every other month. So.
Yeah, right on the corner. You got some. You need something. You got some watches. You want some? No. I do something called the Powerverse. You have the Marvel universe, the DC universe. It's called the Powerverse. Thepowerverse.com. Just check me out. All my books are there. I have a book that is called The Icon Equation. It's me taking 20 years of studying comics and how to make a comic and a character iconic. It's called the Icon Equation. It's 19 steps. 19 steps to make your character and your comic book and your universe iconic. Stop by thepowerverse.com, pick it up, and I might stand outside for a little bit.
Yeah, I think we'll all be standing on the street corner right here. So you can find me at Charlie McElvy. If you can spell my last name, good luck. It's right there. Pretty much anywhere except for Instagram because they hose me, so you put a dot between my first and last name. Also, you can go to spidersquirrel.com or spider-squirrel.com. Either one will get you to either my current projects or whatever. I have a lot going on. Like I mentioned, I have at least 5 projects. Hopefully, all of them in some instance or another will be launched this year. So, come talk to me. I'm happy to talk all the time.
Thank you.